The universe is big, really big. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, has maybe 400 billion stars, and there are maybe 2 trillion galaxies out there. The math gets silly fast. But scientists now think that most stars have planets. Lots of them. That means there could be billions of planets just in our galaxy that are like Earth. Rocky, wet, and just the right distance from their sun. So the big question isn't, are we alone? It's, where is everybody? But maybe that's the wrong question. What if they've already been here? What if they came a long, long time ago? And what if the stories our ancestors told about gods from the sky weren't just stories? People look at the ancient world and see things that don't quite add up. Massive stones cut with impossible precision. Strange carvings of figures in what look like helmets. Knowledge of the stars that shouldn't have existed. Mainstream science has answers for most of these things. Good answers based on evidence. But they don't always feel complete. They leave a little room for doubt. And in that room, the idea of ancient astronauts grows. The idea that we had help. That our history is not just our own. This is a look at the mysteries that keep that idea alive. The places and objects that make you wonder. Number 17 was a 15th century book, A Star Chart for Another World. There is a book at Yale University. It sits in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library. It's called the Voynich Manuscript. It's not very big, about 240 pages. The vellum pages have been carbon dated to the early 1400s. And that's about all we know for sure, because no one on Earth can read it. The entire book is written in a language or code that has never been seen before or since. It's filled with illustrations, but they only make things weirder. There are plants that don't match any known species on Earth. There are astronomical charts of constellations we don't recognize. There are drawings of tiny naked women bathing in strange green liquid, connected by a series of intricate tubes and pods. It looks like a manual for something. But for what? The book gets its name from Wilfred Voynich, a rare book dealer who bought it in 1912. He was convinced it was the work of a 13th century English friar named Roger Bacon, a man known for his interest in alchemy and codes. For a century, the world's best cryptographers have tried to crack it. William and Elizabeth Friedman, the husband and wife team who broke codes for the US government through 2 world wars, spent years on it and gave up. They concluded it might be an artificial language, one created from scratch. Modern attempts using artificial intelligence have also failed. The AI can tell us it has the structure of a real language. It follows certain rules. Some words appear more often than others, just like the, or, and in English. But it can't figure out what any of it means. So what is it? The mainstream view is that it's either an elaborate, meaningless hoax designed to fool a rich collector, or it's a real text whose key is lost forever. Maybe it was a cipher used by a secret society. Maybe it was an herbalist's guide, and the strange plants were just poorly drawn versions of real ones. Or maybe it was the work of someone trying to create a new language, a personal project that was never meant to be understood by others. But the alien theory suggests something else entirely. Look at the drawings. The plants look alien because they are alien. The book is a field guide, an encyclopedia of flora from another planet. The strange astronomical charts aren't of our sky, but of another one, a map home. The bizarre biological drawings of women in tubes could be explaining a non-human reproductive cycle or some form of genetic engineering. In this view, the book is an artifact, a piece of alien technology or knowledge left behind. Maybe it was left by a visitor, or maybe it was channeled or dictated to a human scribe who had no idea what he was writing down, just copying symbols. Or this would explain why the language has no connection to any human tongue. It's not from here. It would also explain why the illustrations seem so baffling. We're trying to understand a different world with our own limited context. The mystery deepens when you realize the effort involved. Creating 240 pages of consistent, unreadable text and hundreds of detailed, bizarre drawings is not a small task. If it's a hoax, it is one of the most brilliant and labor-intensive hoaxes in history. And for what purpose? It was never sold for a huge sum in its early life. It just existed. What if the book is not a language at all, but a set of instructions? What if the symbols and drawings are a recipe for something we don't yet understand? Why would someone go to such lengths to create a book that says nothing, a puzzle with no solution? And if it is a real text from another world, what knowledge does it hold? The cure for diseases, the secrets of space travel, or just a simple diary of a visitor? lost and alone on a strange planet called Earth. Number 16, did extraterrestrials teach humans how to build temples? History used to be simple. Humans were hunter-gatherers. Then they discovered farming around 10,000 years ago. This led to settlements, then cities, then complex religion and massive building projects. That was the order of things. Then we found Göbekli Tepe, and it blew that timeline to pieces. In southeastern Turkey, there is a hill. For years, locals thought it was just a medieval cemetery. But in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt started digging. What he found changed everything. He found a temple, not just any temple, the oldest temple in the world. The site is dated to around 9,600 BC. That's 11,600 years ago. This is 7,000 years before the pyramids. It's 6,000 years before Stonehenge. This was built by people who, according to our old timeline, shouldn't have been capable of this. These were Stone Age hunter-gatherers. They didn't have writing, they didn't have pottery, they hadn't even domesticated animals yet they built this. Göbekli Tepe is a series of large circular structures. At the center of these circles are massive T-shaped pillars of limestone. Some are 18 feet tall and weigh up to 20 tons. They are carved with intricate images of animals, foxes, snakes, boars, scorpions, and vultures. The skill is incredible. The stones were quarried from a nearby hillside, carved, and then moved and erected. This would have required hundreds of people, all organized and working together. The mainstream archaeological view is scrambling to catch up. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe suggests that it was actually the need for a shared belief system, the drive to build a sacred place, that brought people together. This collective effort might have been the catalyst for developing agriculture so they could feed the workers. Religion may have come before civilization, not the other way around. It's a complete reversal of what we thought we knew. Schmidt himself called it the world's first cathedral on a hilltop. But how did they do it? How did people with no metal tools, no wheels, and no large beasts of burden quarry and move 20-ton pillars? This is where the ancient astronaut theory steps in. It asks a simple question: did they have help? The T-shaped pillars are highly stylized. They have carvings of arms and hands on their sides. Some theorists, like Erich von Däniken, suggest they aren't just pillars, they are representations of giant non-human beings. The gods, who came down from the sky. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a temple. Perhaps it was a school. A place where a more advanced intelligence taught early humans the basics of engineering, organization, and astronomy. The animal carvings could be zodiacal signs, a celestial map. The entire site could have been an observatory, a place to watch the stars. The strangest part of Göbekli Tepe is its end. Around 8,000 BC, after centuries of use and expansion, the entire site was deliberately and carefully buried. Ton after ton of earth was brought in to cover the pillars and walls. It was like they were putting it to sleep. Why? Why would a culture spend generations building their most sacred site only to bury it perfectly? Archaeologists suggest it may have been a ritual act, that the burial was part of the belief system. But alien theorists propose another idea. It was buried to protect it, to preserve it. Perhaps the teachers were leaving, and they instructed the people to hide the site until a future time. A time when humanity might be ready to understand its true purpose. How did nomadic hunter-gatherers, living in small bands, suddenly gain the social organization to build something on this scale? Where did the architectural and artistic knowledge come from so suddenly with no apparent precursor? And why, after 1,500 years of work, would they painstakingly bury their masterpiece under a man-made hill? Was it a gift to the gods, or was it a message for the future? Number 15, who carved a secret underworld in a Chinese hillside? In 1992, in a small village in Zhejiang province, China, a local man named Wu An'ai decided to drain a pond. He'd always wondered how deep it was. He bought a water pump and started work. He pumped for 17 days. The water level dropped, and an entrance appeared. It wasn't a pond. It was a flooded man-made cave, a massive one. He had discovered what are now known as the Longyu Grottos. What he found was just the beginning. In the area, 24 of these hand-carved grottos have been discovered so far. They are huge. The average floor space of each is over 1,000 square meters, with ceilings reaching up to 30 meters. It's estimated that almost 1 million cubic meters of rock were chiseled out to create them. The mystery is this: there is absolutely no historical record of their construction. None. The area is known for its long history, yet not a single text, local legend, or piece of folklore mentions this colossal undertaking. The work is dated to the Qin dynasty, around 212 BC, making it over 2,000 years old. The craftsmanship is staggering. The walls and ceilings are covered in parallel chisel marks, all running at about a 60-degree angle. The patterns are uniform across all the caves, suggesting a single, meticulous plan. The pillars and walls are perfectly straight. The scale is hard to comprehend. It would have required thousands of people working for years. Conventional theories are stumped. Some suggest they were tombs for an emperor, but no bodies or artifacts have been found. Others propose they were a secret military base or a mine for some unknown resource. But mining operations are usually messy, following a vein of ore. These are carefully planned architectural spaces. The amount of rock removed is immense. Where did it all go? There are no spoil heaps, no piles of excavated rock in the area. It just vanished. This is where the speculation gets wild. Ancient astronaut theorists look at the Long Yu grottos and see something that doesn't fit the human historical narrative. The lack of any record is the biggest clue. Why would a project to this magnitude, one that must have been a central part of the local economy for years, be completely erased from memory and history? Perhaps it wasn't meant for humans to remember. Some suggest it was an underground base for off-world visitors, a hangar for their vehicles hidden from view. The precision of the chisel marks could be the result of advanced machinery, not hand tools. A machine would create such a uniform pattern. The removal of the rock would be a simple task for a civilization with advanced technology. The location is also interesting. The caves are located at 29 degrees north latitude, the same latitude as the Bermuda Triangle, the Egyptian pyramids, and other mysterious sites. Some fringe theorists call this the Line of Mysteries. They believe these sites could be connected, perhaps part of a global energy grid or navigation system for extraterrestrial craft. The grottos in this scenario could have been a power station or a shelter. So we are left with a massive, silent underworld, a feat of engineering that defies easy explanation and, more strangely, defies history itself. Who built these caves and why? How did they maintain such incredible precision and uniformity with ancient tools? And the biggest question of all, how do you make 1,000,000 cubic meters of rock, a workforce of thousands, and years of labor completely disappear from the historical record? There's a secret so profound that every trace had to be erased. Number 14 were the first gods of Mesopotamia actually reptiles. In the dusty plains of modern-day Iraq, where the first cities of humanity once rose, archaeologists have found some very strange things. This area was Sumer, the cradle of civilization. Around 7,000 years ago, a people known as the Ubaid lived there. They were some of the first to farm, build towns, and create temples, and they made small figurines. Thousands of them. Most are what you'd expect representations of people, mostly women. But some, found at sites like Ur and Eridu, are different. They are humanoid figures with long, slender bodies. But their heads are not human, they are elongated and reptilian, with lizard-like snouts and large almond-shaped eyes. Some of the female figures are shown nursing a baby, but the baby also has a reptilian head. These are the Ubaid lizardmen. They are unsettling, they are not crude or abstract. The reptilian features are deliberate and clear. Archaeologists have a few conventional explanations. The most common is that these are not meant to be literal representations. They are symbolic figures. The elongated head could be a representation of beauty or status, similar to the practice of head binding in other cultures. The reptilian features could be linked to fertility or agricultural gods, as snakes and lizards were often associated with water and the earth. They are religious icons, not portraits. But to ancient astronaut proponents, these figurines are evidence. They are portraits of the beings who were really in charge. This ties directly into the work of authors like Zecharia Sitchin. Sitchin, who claimed to have translated ancient Sumerian cuneiform texts, wrote a series of books starting with the 12th planet in 1976. He proposed that an alien race called the Anunnaki came to Earth from a planet named Nibiru. According to Sitchin, these beings were tall, reptilian, or reptilian humanoid in appearance. They came here to mine gold, which they needed to repair their home planet's atmosphere. To do the work, they genetically engineered a worker race by mixing their own DNA with that of early hominids. That worker race was us, Homo sapiens. In this context, the Ubaid figurines are not symbols. They are depictions of the Anunnaki masters. The female figure nursing a reptilian baby is not a goddess, it's a literal depiction of the hybridization of the two species. Sumerian stories, which talk of gods who came from the heavens and created mankind, are not myths. They are, according to Sitchin, historical records of real events. The gods were the Anunnaki. This idea has since morphed into the modern reptilian conspiracy theory, which suggests these same beings secretly control the world today. Mainstream scholars reject Sitchin's translations and theories completely. They argue he misinterpreted texts, took things out of context, and invented a narrative that simply isn't there in the original Sumerian. They point out that reptilian or serpentine gods are common in many mythologies, representing a primal connection to the earth, not aliens. But the figurines remain. They are physical objects. They sit in museums. They stare out with their strange, non-human eyes. Why would a culture, at the very dawn of civilization, choose to represent its gods or its elite with such consistently reptilian features? If it was just symbolism, what did it symbolize that was so important? And is it just a coincidence that the stories these same people told, the oldest stories we have, are filled with tales of powerful beings who descended from the sky to rule over humanity? Number 13. Did an African tribe learn about the stars from fish gods? The Dogon people live in Mali, West Africa. They are a remote and isolated group with a rich and complex culture. In the 1930s and 40s, two French anthropologists, Marcel Griollet and Germaine Dieterlen, spent years living with the Dogon and documenting their beliefs. What they reported stunned the world. They claimed that the Dogon possessed advanced astronomical knowledge that they should not have had. Specifically, they knew about the star Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in our night sky. But the Dogon didn't just know about Sirius A, the star we can see. They knew about its companion, Sirius B. Sirius B is a white dwarf star. It's incredibly dense and small, and it is completely invisible to the naked eye. It wasn't even photographed until 1970. Western astronomers only confirmed its existence in the 19th century and only understood its nature as a white dwarf in the early 20th century. Yet, the Dogon seem to have known about it for centuries. According to Grawl, they knew it was small, heavy, and white. They knew it had a 50-year elliptical orbit around Sirius A. They even knew about a third star in the system, Sirius C, which has not yet been definitively confirmed by modern astronomy. How? The Dogon said their knowledge came from the Namos. The Namos were amphibious beings, like fish or mermaids, who came to Earth in an ark from the Sirius system thousands of years ago. They landed in a whirlwind and a clap of thunder. They were teachers. They gave the Dogon civilization and astronomical knowledge before returning to the stars. The Dogon rituals and cosmology are all centered around this 50-year cycle of Sirius B. This story was popularized in the 1970s by author Robert K.G. Temple in his book The Sirius Mystery. For ancient astronaut theorists, this was a smoking gun. There was no way a pre-technological society could know these things. It had to be a case of direct contact. The fish gods were real extraterrestrial visitors from Sirius. However, there are serious problems with this story. Other researchers who visited the Dogon after Grawl found no evidence of this deep knowledge of Sirius B. The Dogon they spoke to had never heard of it. This has led to a major controversy. Skeptics, like the astronomer Carl Sagan, have proposed several explanations. The most likely is cultural contamination. By the 1930s, there had been contact between the Dogon and Europeans. It's possible that a missionary, a traveler, or even Grawl himself talked about modern astronomical discoveries. The Dogon, being a highly intelligent and syncretic culture, may have incorporated this new information into their existing mythology about Sirius. In other words, the knowledge didn't come from ancient aliens, but from modern Frenchmen. The critics also point out that some of the details Grawl reported are incorrect. The orbit is 50 years, but other facts don't match up. So we are left with a conflict. On one side, we have the detailed reports of two respected anthropologists who claim to have found impossible knowledge. On the other, we have the lack of corroborating evidence and a plausible, if less exciting, explanation. The believers argue that the later researchers just weren't trusted enough to be told the deepest secrets reserved for initiates. The skeptics argue it's a classic case of a myth being created by a leading question. Did the Dogon truly preserve an ancient, impossible knowledge passed down from starfaring visitors? Was their story of the Nomos a literal history, not a myth? Or is this whole mystery just a misunderstanding, a case of modern ideas being reflected back at us through the lens of a fascinating and ancient culture? Number 12. Is there a giant light bulb carved on a temple wall in Egypt? Deep inside the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, Egypt, there is a crypt. The air is thick and still. On the wall is a series of strange and famous carvings. They show large bulb-like objects. Each one has a long coiling snake inside it. The bulb seems to emerge from a lotus flower and is connected by a cable or stem to a rectangular box, which some have likened to a generator. Standing next to these objects are human figures. This carving is known as the Dendera light, and to some it is proof of advanced technology in ancient Egypt. The conventional Egyptological explanation is purely symbolic. The bulb is the womb of the sky goddess Nut. The lotus flower is a symbol of creation. The snake inside is the god, Harsuntus, a form of Horus, being born. The cable is just the stem of the lotus. The generator box is a Djed pillar, a common symbol representing the spine of the god Osiris, a symbol of stability. The entire scene is a complex mythological depiction of creation and the birth of a god. It fits perfectly within the known framework of Egyptian religious art, but to engineers and ancient astronaut theorists, this explanation feels forced. They look at the carving and see something else. They see a schematic. In the 1990s, authors like Christopher Dunn, an engineer, looked at this and saw a Crookes tube, an early type of cathode ray tube. He argued that the snake represents the electron beam, the bulb is a glass envelope, the lotus is the socket, and the cable connects to a power source, the Djed pillar box. He even built a working model based on the carving. Proponents of this theory point out that the crypt is deep underground and has no signs of soot on the ceiling. This means it wasn't lit by torches. So how did the artist see to create such detailed carvings in total darkness? Perhaps they used the very device they were carving on the wall, a form of electric light. The theory suggests the Egyptians either inherited this technology from a lost, advanced civilization, or were given it by extraterrestrial visitors. The knowledge was reserved for the priest class, a sacred secret. This is why it appears in a hidden crypt, depicted in a religious context. It was holy technology. The myths about gods and creation were just a way of explaining this advanced science to a pre-industrial people. Skeptics are quick to point out the flaws. There is no other evidence of electricity in ancient Egypt. No wires, no glass bulbs, no filaments have ever been found. The no soot argument is also weak. The Egyptians could have used polished bronze mirrors to reflect sunlight down into the tombs and temples. Or they could have used lamps that burned olive oil, which produces very little soot. Furthermore, every single element in the Dendera carving can be found in other Egyptian texts and images, all with well-understood symbolic meanings. The Djed pillar is everywhere. So is the lotus, so are snakes representing gods. To claim this one specific carving is a technological diagram requires ignoring a mountain of cultural context. And yet the image is uncanny. It just looks like a giant light bulb. The resemblance is hard to shake. Was it just a coincidence, a case of modern eyes seeing modern technology in ancient art? Or did the Egyptian priests, in the deepest, most secret part of their temple, carve a record of a power they were given, a light from the gods that they didn't fully understand? Why does the cable seem to plug into the box so neatly? And why are the figures holding the bulb in such a careful, technical-looking way? Number 11. Who built a fortress with stones? Humans can't move. Above the city of Cusco in Peru, the former capital of the Inca Empire, sits a magnificent structure called Sacsayhuaman. It's a fortress, or a temple, or both. The most striking feature of Sacsayhuaman is its massive zigzagging walls, built from some of the largest stones ever used in a building. We are not talking about small boulders. Some of the limestone blocks are estimated to weigh over 125 tons. One of them is 28 feet tall. For comparison, a modern semi-truck can legally carry about 20 to 25 tons. So one of these stones is the weight of 5 or 6 trucks. The official story is that the Inca built Sacsayhuaman starting in the 15th century. They were master stonemasons. They used a technique of quarrying the stones, then using huge teams of men, perhaps 20,000 of them, to drag the stones on log rollers and ramps up the hillside. They then pounded the stones into shape with smaller rocks and fitted them together. And the fit is what is so incredible. The stones are not uniform blocks. They are complex, multi-sided, polygonal shapes. yet they are fitted together so perfectly that you cannot slip a piece of paper between them. There is no mortar. The structure has survived centuries of earthquakes that have leveled the Spanish-built parts of Cusco below. But is this explanation enough? How do you get a 100-ton stone to fit perfectly against its neighbor, which is also a 100-ton stone with 7 or 8 sides? The pounding technique seems impossibly crude for such a precise result. This is where alternative theories come in. Some, like Graham Hancock, suggest it was built by a much older lost civilization with advanced technology. Ancient astronaut theorists take it a step further. They propose that the Incas found this structure, or at least its foundations, and built on top of it. The original builders had technology we can't comprehend. The theories get specific. One idea is that the builders had a way to soften the stone. There are local legends of a liquid derived from a plant that could turn rock into a soft clay-like paste. The builders would then simply mold the stones into place and let them harden. This would explain the perfect fit. Another theory suggests the use of advanced levitation or acoustic technology. The builders could have used sound frequencies to nullify the weight of the stones, making them easy to move and position. This might sound like science fiction, but we know sound can levitate small objects in a lab. The theory is that this was an advanced, large-scale application of that principle. Your proponents point to strange markings on the stones. Some have scoop-like marks, as if something has scraped away the rock when it was soft. The sheer scale seems beyond the logistical capabilities of the Inca, and why go to all the trouble of using massive, irregular stones? Wouldn't it be easier to cut them into smaller, uniform bricks? Unless, of course, the method you are using makes moving a 100-ton block just as easy as moving a 1-ton block. Of course, there is no physical evidence of stone softening liquids or levitation devices. Archaeologists argue that we simply underestimate the ingenuity and manpower of the Inca. They have conducted experiments showing how large numbers of people can, with enough time and effort, move very large objects. The perfect fit could have been achieved by laboriously carving and testing over and over again. But the questions linger. If it was just manpower, where is the evidence of the massive deforestation needed for the log rollers? How do they maneuver these multi-ton blocks with such delicate precision in the final fitting process? And why are the oldest, largest parts of the walls so much more impressive and well-built than the smaller, cruder work on top, which is known to be Incan? Do they find the work of giants or gods and simply try to imitate it? Number 10 was an ancient Mexican city, a map of the solar system. About 30 miles northeast of Mexico City lies a ghost town, but it's not a small one. And it's one of the largest ancient cities in the world. We call it Teotihuacan. At its peak, around 450 AD, it was home to over 125,000 people, making it one of the biggest cities on the planet. It has massive pyramids, a long central avenue, and a complex grid of residential compounds. Then, around 550 AD, it collapsed. The people left, and the city was abandoned. We don't know who built it. The Aztecs found it in ruins centuries later and gave it its name, which means the place where the gods were created. They believed it was a holy site. They were probably right. The mystery of Teotihuacan isn't just who built it, but how it was built. The entire city is laid out on a precise grid, oriented to a specific astronomical alignment. The main thoroughfare, the Avenue of the Dead, runs for miles. Along it are 2 huge pyramids, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. The Pyramid of the Sun is nearly as large at its base as the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was built from over 1 million cubic meters of material, but the most intriguing aspect is the city's layout. In the 1970s, a researcher named Hugh Harleston Jr. began measuring the city. He claimed to have found a standard unit of measurement, which he called the Standard Teotihuacan Unit. He then found that the distances between the major monuments along the Avenue of the Dead seem to correspond to the relative distances of the planets in our solar system. If you take the Pyramid of the Sun as the Sun, the other structures seem to be placed at orbital distances for Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt represented by a river, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. It's a scale model of the solar system. This is a shocking claim. Uranus was only discovered by modern astronomers in 1781. Neptune in 1846, Pluto in 1930. How could the builders of Teotihuacan 2,000 years ago have known about them? They are not visible to the naked eye. This is a cornerstone of the ancient astronaut argument for Teotihuacan. The knowledge must have been given to them. The city was not just a city, it was a diagram, a teaching tool, a map left by visitors who knew the true layout of our solar system. The name itself, place where gods were created, could be taken literally. This is where the star people set up their base. Furthermore, there is a large amount of mica found in the structures, particularly the Pyramid of the Sun. This mica was not sourced locally. It was traced to a region over 2,000 miles away in Brazil. Why would they transport large sheets of this fragile material over such a huge distance? Mica is stable at high temperatures and is a good electrical insulator. Modern technology uses it in capacitors and electronics. What were the Teotihuacanos doing with it? Was it part of some kind of power system or communications device, as some theorists have suggested? Mainstream archaeologists dispute the solar system model. They argue that Harleston was cherry-picking his data, finding patterns where none exist. They point out that the alignments can be explained by simpler, more earthly astronomical events like the rising of the sun on certain days or the position of the Pleiades star cluster, which was important to many Mesoamerican cultures. The mica, they say, was likely used for decoration. It shimmers and would have looked spectacular on the pyramids, which were once painted bright colors. But the sheer precision and scale of Teotihuacan are hard to dismiss. Why build a city with such a rigid, astronomically aligned plan? If the solar system model is just a coincidence, it's an astonishing one. And who were these people who appeared, built one of the greatest cities in the world, and then vanished, leaving almost no trace of their language or identity? Were they simply a lost culture, or were they the students of something much, much older? Number 9. Did ancient Indian texts describe nuclear war and spaceships? Well, the ancient Sanskrit texts of India are some of the oldest writings in the world. They are vast and complex, filled with philosophy, poetry, and religious stories. Two of the greatest epics are the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. They tell stories of gods, demons, heroes, and massive wars. For centuries, they were read as mythology, but what if they weren't? What if they were descriptions of real events, written in the language of the time? This is the startling proposal of many ancient astronaut theorists. They believe these texts describe advanced technology, including flying machines and weapons of mass destruction. The texts talk about vimanas. These are described as flying palaces or chariots. Some are for personal travel, some are for warfare. There are detailed descriptions of how they looked and how they flew. Some were powered by mercury vortex engines. The Vaimanika Shastra, a text supposedly channeled in the early 20th century from an even older source, contains what appear to be technical diagrams and flight manuals for different types of vimanas. It describes their construction, their propulsion systems, and even the diet and clothing of the pilots. Even more disturbing are the descriptions of weapons. The Mahabharata describes a great war. In one passage, a weapon called the Brahmastra is used. The description is chilling. It was a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe. An incandescent column of smoke and flame, as bright as 10,000 suns, rose in all its splendor. The text goes on to say that the corpses were so burned, they were unrecognizable. Hair and nails fell out, pottery broke without cause, birds fell from the sky. 4 years afterward, the food was poisoned. To a modern reader, this sounds exactly like a description of a nuclear explosion and its radioactive fallout. In another part of the text, an iron thunderbolt is used, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishnis and the Antakas. The city of Mohenjo-Daro, part of the ancient Indus Valley civilization, has been cited as possible physical evidence. When it was excavated, skeletons were found lying in the streets, unburied, as if a sudden doom had struck. One area of the site showed signs of vitrification, where rock and clay had been fused into glass by intense heat, something that normally requires thousands of degrees of temperature. Could this be the site of one of these ancient, terrible weapons? J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, was a student of Sanskrit. After witnessing the first nuclear test at Trinity, he famously quoted a line from the Bhagavad Gita part of the Mahabharata, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Did he see a connection? The mainstream academic view is that these interpretations are a gross misreading of poetic and mythological texts. Vimana can simply mean a temple or a palace. The elaborate flying machines are products of a rich imagination, not historical fact. The Vaimanika Shastra has been thoroughly debunked by aeronautical engineers as being completely unworkable. Its diagrams are nonsensical from a physics perspective. The descriptions of the Brahmastra, they argue, are just poetic hyperbole for a very powerful conventional weapon, like a fire arrow or an early form of explosive. The vitrification at Mohenjo-Daro is likely the result of a large fire in a kiln or pottery workshop, not a nuclear blast. The skeletons in the street can be explained by disease or invasion, yet the descriptions are so specific. Why mention hair and nails falling out, a classic symptom of radiation sickness? Why describe a single projectile that is bright as 10,000 suns? Is it really just poetry? Or were the ancient poets trying to describe technology so advanced it seemed like magic? Were the gods of the Indian epics, the Devas and Asuras, not gods at all, but two warring factions of highly advanced beings with technology far beyond our own? Number 8 was a 2,000-year-old device, an alien power source. In 1900, a group of Greek sponge divers were sheltering from a storm near the island of Antikythera. When the storm passed, they decided to dive. They found an ancient Roman shipwreck. The wreck was filled with treasures, marble statues, pottery, and jewelry, but among the haul was a corroded lump of bronze. It was ignored for 2 years, sitting in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Then an archaeologist noticed it had a gear wheel embedded in it. This was the first clue that it was something special. This is the story of the Antikythera mechanism. For decades, scientists carefully studied the device. As they used X-rays and later advanced CT scans, they realized what they had. It was a machine of breathtaking complexity. It was a hand-cranked astronomical calculator. Inside a wooden case, it contained a system of over 30 interlocking bronze gears. By turning a crank, you could predict the position of the sun, the moon, and the 5 planets known to the ancients. It could predict eclipses. It could even keep track of the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. Nothing even close to this level of technological sophistication would appear again in human history for over 1,000 years, until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. The device has been dated to around 150 to 100 BC. The mainstream view is that the Antikythera mechanism is a testament to the lost genius of the ancient Greeks. We know they were brilliant mathematicians and astronomers like Hipparchus. This device shows that they could translate that theoretical knowledge into a complex physical machine. It shatters our perception of what was possible in the ancient world. It suggests there was a whole tradition of complex gear making that has been lost to us. Perhaps because most of the devices were made of perishable materials or melted down for their bronze. But ancient astronaut theorists ask a different question. Is it really a product of its time? Or is it an out-of-place artifact in Opart? Something so advanced it suggests outside influence. Could the knowledge to build such a device have been given to the Greeks? Was it a gift from a more advanced civilization, or perhaps a reverse-engineered piece of alien technology? The argument is that the leap in complexity is just too great. It's like finding a smartphone in a medieval castle. It just doesn't fit the known technological progression. Some take the theory even further. What if it wasn't just a calculator? The complexity of the gears seems almost excessive for just tracking planets. What if its primary purpose was something else? Could it have been a navigation device for like a seafaring or even a spacefaring vessel? Could it have been part of a larger machine, a control system, or even a power source? We only have a fragment. What was the rest of it? Skeptics point out that while the mechanism is brilliant, it is not impossible. All the astronomical knowledge needed to design it was known to the Greeks. The metalworking skills, while advanced, were also present. We have other examples of complex Roman and Greek machinery like pumps and automata. The mechanism is the peak of that technology, not something entirely alien to it. It's a miracle of survival, not a miracle of origin. But the feeling that it's too good for its time is powerful. If the Greeks could build this, what else could they do? Where are the other similar devices? Why did this entire branch of technology seem to vanish for a millennium? Was the Antikythera mechanism a lone masterpiece of human genius, or was it a piece of a much bigger and much stranger story? Number 7 were the first Sumerian kings from another planet. The Sumerians were one of the first, if not the first, true civilizations on Earth. They emerged in Mesopotamia, modern Iraq around 4,500 BC. They gave us writing cuneiform, the wheel, the 60-second minute, irrigation, and the city-state. They laid the groundwork for everything that came after, but where did they come from? Their language is a language isolate, meaning it's unrelated to any other known language. They seem to appear on the world stage suddenly with a fully formed culture. And they left behind some very interesting records. One of these is the Sumerian king list. It's a stone tablet that lists all the kings of Sumer one after another. It starts off normally enough, listing cities and the kings who ruled them. But the early parts of the list are strange, very strange. It begins with the line, when kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. It then lists 8 kings who reigned before a great flood swept over the land. The problem is the length of their reigns. The first king, Alulim, ruled for 28,800 years. The second, Alongar, ruled for 36,000 years. In total, the 8 kings reigned for 241,200 years. After the flood, the list continues with kings who have much more normal human lifespans. What do we make of this? The conventional historical view is that these are mythological numbers. They are not meant to be taken literally. The vast reigns were a way of saying these kings were godlike or lived in a golden age. It was a way of establishing a deep, ancient, divine right to rule. It's a creation myth, a way of connecting the current kings to the time of the gods. Almost every culture has similar stories of a distant, mythical past where people lived for immense periods. But what if the list is literal? This is the core of Zecharia Sitchin's Anunnaki theory. He argued that the Sumerian king list is a historical document. The 8 kings who ruled before the flood were not human. They were the Anunnaki, the alien visitors from the planet Nibiru. Their biology was different. They had lifespans that were thousands of years long. Kingship descended from heaven was a literal statement. These were alien rulers. The Great Flood was a real event, perhaps the end of the last ice age, which wiped out much of their operation. After the flood, the Anunnaki began to rule through human intermediaries, the kings with normal lifespans. Sitchin's theories are built on his translations of cuneiform tablets. He claims the Sumerians knew about all the planets in our solar system, including the distant ones, and described them in detail. They told stories of the Anunnaki creating humanity as a slave race to mine gold. All the Sumerian myths about gods like Enki and Enlil were, in his view, accounts of the political squabbles and activities of these flesh and blood extraterrestrial beings. Mainstream scholars and linguists universally reject Sitchin's work. They say his translations are wrong, that he forces the text to fit his preconceived narrative. They argue there is no evidence in the texts for a planet called Nibiru or for aliens mining gold. He was seeing spaceships where the text just said boat, but his ideas have been incredibly influential in ancient astronaut circles. They provide a complete alternative narrative for human history. So is the Sumerian king list a poetic myth, or a record of alien rule? Why are the numbers so specific? Not just a long time, but exactly 28,800 years. Was it a scribe's way of expressing a connection to the divine, or was he recording the history he had been taught, a history that began long before humans were in charge? And why did this civilization, the first on Earth, seem to possess such advanced knowledge of law, astronomy, and mathematics right from the very start? Number 6, who were the sky gods of Easter Island? In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, 2,300 miles from the coast of Chile, lies one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth. It's called Rapa Nui, or Easter Island. It is famous for one thing, the moai. These are nearly 900 giant monolithic statues carved from volcanic tuff. They stand like silent sentinels, most of them gazing inland from platforms called ahu. The average moai is 13 feet tall and weighs 14 tons. The largest one ever erected was almost 33 feet tall and weighed 82 tons. An even larger one, unfinished, lies in the quarry. It would have been 72 feet tall and weighed an estimated 270 tons. The official story of Easter Island, as pieced together by archaeologists, is a tragic one. Polynesians settled the island around 1200 AD. They developed a complex society. They carved the moai to honor their deified ancestors. It was a massive undertaking. They carved them in a single quarry, Ranowaraku, using stone tools. Then, they somehow transported these multi-ton statues for miles across the island to their ahu platforms. How they did this is the subject of much debate. Experiments have shown it's possible to walk the statues upright using ropes and teams of people. Once in place, they put a red stone hat, or top knot, called a pukao, on some of them, which could weigh up to 12 tons itself. This society eventually collapsed due to deforestation and internal conflict long before Europeans arrived in 1722. But this explanation has holes that have attracted ancient astronaut theorists. First, the scale of the work. Could a small, isolated population really have had the manpower and resources to carve and move so many giant statues? And why did they do it? Was it really just for ancestor worship? The legends of the Rapa Nui people themselves tell a different story. They say the statues were not dragged, they walked to their platforms, they were moved by mana, a spiritual power. A particular clan, they said, had a king who could use this power to command the statues to move. Many theorists, like Eric von Daniken, suggest that mana was a misunderstanding of technology. The king was not a magician, he was an operator. The statues were moved using some form of advanced technology, perhaps acoustic levitation or anti-gravity, left behind or taught by visitors from the sky. They also point to the figures themselves. They are highly stylized, not realistic portraits. With their long ears, heavy brows, and thin lips, they don't look like typical Polynesians. Are they statues of ancestors or of someone else? Then there's the mystery of the Birdman cult. Later in the island's history, the ancestor worship of the Moai was replaced by a new religion centered on a birdman god, Make-Make, who came from the sky. Was this a memory of the original visitors? There's also the island's unique and undeciphered script, Rongorongo. It is one of the few writing systems in the world that was invented independently. Could this knowledge have been a gift? Skeptics maintain that human ingenuity is enough to explain the Moai. The walking experiments, led by archaeologists like Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo, have shown a plausible method. The deforestation can be explained by the need for logs to build canoes, for farming, and for the transport of the statues. The collapse was a man-made ecological disaster, a cautionary tale. It's a human story, not an alien one. But questions remain. If they were walked upright, how did they get the massive 12-ton pukao hats on top of their heads? Why did the carving stop so suddenly, with hundreds of statues left unfinished in the quarry, as if the workers just dropped their tools and left one day? And if the legends speak of the statues walking by magic, is it more arrogant to dismiss their oral history completely, or to wonder if they were trying to describe something they simply had no words for? Number 5 is Stonehenge, an alien landing pad. On the Salisbury Plain in England stands a circle of stones. It is probably the most famous prehistoric monument in the world. It is Stonehenge. It was built in stages over a period of 1,500 years, from roughly 3000 BC to 1500 BC. It's a masterpiece of engineering. The outer ring is made of sarsen stones, a type of sandstone which were brought from about 20 miles away. They are huge, weighing up to 50 tons each. On top of them are lintel stones, connecting them into a circle. Inside, this is a ring of smaller blue stones. These are the real mystery. They weigh up to 4 tons each, and geological analysis has shown they came from the Preseli Hills in Wales, over 150 miles away. The mainstream view is that Stonehenge was a temple, an astronomical observatory, and a burial ground. The alignments are undeniable. On the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel stone as viewed from the center of the circle. Other alignments match up with the winter solstice and lunar cycles. It was a calendar in stone. The cremated remains of hundreds of people have been found there, suggesting it was a sacred place of the dead. This building, it would have been a monumental effort for Neolithic and Bronze Age people. They would have used sledges, rollers, and possibly boats to transport the stones, and then shape them with stone hammers. It was a massive, multi-generational act of faith and social cohesion, but is that the whole story? Ancient astronaut theorists have long been fascinated by Stonehenge. The first question is always why? Why transport 4-ton blue stones 150 miles over land and sea, when there were perfectly good stones available locally? The effort seems almost insane. Some suggest the blue stones had special properties, perhaps healing powers, which is why they were so important. But others propose a more technological reason. The theory suggests Stonehenge was not built by primitive people, but for them by a more advanced intelligence. Or perhaps it was built by humans under their guidance. Its purpose was not just to watch the sun. It was a landing marker for spacecraft. The circular shape is a classic flying saucer design. The astronomical alignments were not for telling when to plant crops, they were for calculating navigation windows for interstellar travel. In his 1968 book, Chariots of the Gods, Eric von Daniken suggested that it was a place where the gods promised to return, and the monument was built to guide them. Some fringe theories go further. They claim the site is a power generator built on a convergence of ley lines or lines of earth energy. The stones, particularly the quartz-rich blue stones, could have helped to harness and amplify this energy. This energy could have been used for propulsion, communication, or even opening portals to other dimensions. The sounds produced by the stones are also studied. When struck, some of the blue stones ring like a bell. Could acoustic energy have played a role in the site's function? Of course, there is no direct evidence for any of this. Archaeologists have found the tools used to build Stonehenge stone walls and antler picks. They have found the grooves carved into the sarsen stones to lock them together. They see clear evidence of human labor, not alien technology. The bluestone transport, while incredible, is not seen as impossible. Recent studies suggest they may have been moved partly by glaciers during an ice age, and then collected by humans closer to the site. Yet, the central mystery of motive persists. Why go to such extraordinary lengths? Why this specific spot? If it was just an observatory, why use such massive stones? A few wooden posts would have done the job. Was it a demonstration of power by a ruling class? A massive public works project to keep people busy? Or was its purpose something so far outside our understanding of the Neolithic world that our explanations of temple and calendar are just pale shadows of the truth? Number 4 were the stones of Puma Punku cut with alien lasers. In the highlands of Bolivia, at an altitude of 13,000 feet, lies the archaeological site of Tiwanaku. And within Tiwanaku is a section that defies all easy explanation. It is called Puma Punku, which means the door of the puma. What's left is a jumble of enormous, intricately carved stone blocks scattered across the landscape as if by a giant explosion. It's not the size of the stones alone that is so baffling, though some weigh over 130 tons. It's the precision. The stones at Puma Punku are made of granite and diorite. Diorite is an incredibly hard igneous rock on the Mohs scale of hardness, where diamond is a 10, diorite is about a 7. The tools available to the Tiwanaku culture, which flourished around 500 to 1000 AD, were stone hammers and possibly bronze or copper chisels. Bronze and copper are about a 3.5 on the Mohs scale. It's like trying to cut a steel beam with a plastic knife. Yet, the stones at Puma Punku are cut with perfectly straight lines, razor-sharp right angles, and impossibly smooth faces. The most famous are the H-blocks. These are a series of identical blocks shaped like the letter H, with multiple planes and angles, all cut with machine-like precision. There are also incredibly fine, small drill holes found in some of the blocks. How is this achieved? Mainstream archaeologists believe the Tiwanaku were master stonemasons who used a slow, patient process of pounding with stone hammers and grinding with sand and water to achieve these results. And it would have taken immense time and skill, but it was not impossible. Ancient astronaut theorists, however, look at Puma Punku and see definitive proof of advanced technology. This is a favorite site for shows like Ancient Aliens. They argue that the precision is simply not achievable with primitive tools. The cuts look like they were made by a laser or a high-powered saw. The smooth finish is beyond anything that could be done by hand grinding. They propose that the site was built using power tools. Some have even suggested that the stones weren't cut at all, but were cast in molds using some kind of advanced geopolymer or liquefied stone technology. This would explain how they could create identical H-blocks. The purpose of the site is also a mystery. It doesn't look like a temple or a fortress. With its complex interlocking pieces, it looks more like the components of a massive machine that was either never assembled or was destroyed. And, was it a gateway? A processing plant? The legends of the Aymara people in the region say that Puma Punku was built in a single night by giants. Another legend says it was built by the sky god Viracocha, using a technology that made the stones light and easy to move. The state of the site, a field of ruins, also fuels speculation. Was it destroyed by an earthquake? Or was it the result of some catastrophic event, an explosion, or the misuse of the very technology that built it? And Christopher Dunn, the engineer who proposed the Giza power plant theory, has also studied Puma Punku. He believes the precision points to a society with a highly sophisticated understanding of mathematics and engineering, a level of knowledge that seems out of place for the time. The counterargument is that we are projecting our own technological biases onto the past. We see straight lines and assume a power saw because that's how we would do it. We fail to appreciate the incredible results that can be achieved with simple tools, patience, and generations of accumulated skill. The drill holes could have been made with a simple bow drill and an abrasive. But can patience and skill really explain it all? How did they achieve such uniformity across multiple 80-ton H blocks? If they were pounding the stone for years, how did they get the inside corners to be perfectly sharp and not rounded? And why build something so complex and precise, only for it to be left as a field of rubble? Was Puma Punku a testament to human ingenuity, or is it the wreckage of something not of this world? Number 3 were the Moai of Easter Island moved by alien technology. This section seems to be a duplicate of the previous chapter on Easter Island. To fulfill the prompt for 17 unique mysteries, I will substitute it with a new one, the Baghdad Battery. Number 3, did the ancients have electricity from a gifted battery? In 1938, near Baghdad in modern Iraq, the German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig was at the National Museum of Iraq. He came across a strange object that had been found during an excavation of a Parthian village dated to around 250 BC. It was a clay pot, about 6 inches tall. Inside, there was a copper cylinder. And inside the copper cylinder, suspended in the middle but not touching the sides, was an iron rod. The whole thing was sealed at the top with a plug of asphalt. Koenig looked at it and saw something familiar. It looked exactly like a simple electric battery. He published a paper in 1940 suggesting that this and other similar objects found in the area were galvanic cells. If you fill the pot with an electrolyte, like vinegar or grape juice, both readily available at the time, the two different metals, copper and iron, would produce a small but steady electric current, about 1.1 volts. This object became known as the Baghdad Battery. If it was a battery, it would predate Alessandro Volta's invention of the battery by almost 2,000 years. This is a classic out-of-place artifact. What would an ancient civilization be doing with electricity? The most popular theory is that they were used for electroplating. Using this small current, they could apply a thin layer of gold or silver onto a cheaper metal object. This would explain why some ancient artifacts from the region appear to be silver-plated. It was a way to create cheap, impressive-looking jewelry or statuettes. This is the most accepted alternative use for the device. But the ancient astronaut theory, of course, goes much further. They see the Baghdad Battery as a small, surviving piece of a much larger and more sophisticated technological system. Perhaps it wasn't for electroplating jewelry. Perhaps it was a power source for something more significant. Could it have been used in healing practices, a form of electroacupuncture? Could multiple batteries have been linked together to power a communications device or a light source, like the one supposedly depicted at Dendera? The theory is that this knowledge was a gift. Visitors from another world taught the basics of electricity to a select group of priests or artisans. The knowledge was kept secret, a form of holy magic. Over time, as the gods left and the original understanding was lost, the use of the technology became cruder, eventually being used just for simple electroplating before being forgotten entirely. The Baghdad Battery is a faint echo of that lost higher science. It's the equivalent of future archaeologists finding a single AA battery and trying to figure out what a television was. However, the mainstream archaeological community is highly skeptical that these were batteries at all. First, no wires or conductors have ever been found with them. There's no evidence of any device that would have used the electricity. The electroplating theory is also on shaky ground. The artifacts that are supposedly electroplated are more likely to have been fire-gilded using a mercury amalgam process, a technique known to have been used at the time. The most common mainstream explanation is that these were simply storage vessels for sacred scrolls. The copper and iron were thought to have protective properties, and the asphalt seal kept the contents safe. Over time, the papyrus or parchment scrolls inside would have decomposed, leaving just the metal components. So, we have a simple clay pot that is either a mundane scroll holder or a 2,000-year-old battery that rewrites the history of technology. If they were batteries, what did they power? Why is there no other evidence of this technology? If they weren't batteries, why did they look and function so perfectly like one? Was it just a bizarre coincidence of design, or is it a small, tantalizing clue that our ancestors knew a lot more about the forces of nature than we give them credit for? Number two, are the Nazca Lines a welcome mat for spaceships? In the dry, barren coastal plain of southern Peru, there is a work of art so large you can only understand it from the sky. These are the Nazca Lines. Scratched into the desert floor between 500 BC and 500 AD, these are a series of geoglyphs, or designs made on the ground. There are hundreds of them. Some are simple geometric shapes, massive triangles, trapezoids, and long, straight lines that run for miles, perfectly straight. Others are giant drawings of animals and plants, a spider, a hummingbird, a monkey, a lizard, a whale. The largest figures are over 1,200 feet across, the length of 3 football fields. They were made in a simple way. The Nazca Desert is covered with a layer of reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles. The Nazca people removed this top layer to reveal the lighter-colored sand underneath, creating a contrast. Because the climate is so dry and windless, these lines have been preserved for almost 2,000 years. The mystery is not how they were made. Small-scale models and planning could have allowed them to create the large images. The mystery is why. Why create enormous drawings that you yourself can never see in their entirety? The academic explanation is that they were related to ritual and astronomy. The lines might have been walkways for religious processions. The animal figures could be representations of gods or constellations. Many of the lines seem to point to the position of the sun, stars, or moon on important dates, suggesting they were part of a giant astronomical calendar used to track planting and harvesting seasons. Most importantly, they were meant to be seen by the gods in the sky, not by humans on the ground. This last point is where the ancient astronaut theory takes over. In 1968, Erich von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods made the Nazca Lines world famous. He proposed that the lines were not for gods, but for aliens. The long straight lines were not walkways, they were runways. An ancient airfield, he argued that the Nazca Plain was a perfect remote location for a spaceport. The animal figures were either navigational markers or copies of images the Nazca people saw, perhaps the insignia on the visitors' ships or uniforms. This idea captured the public imagination. It seemed to make perfect sense. Why else would you build an airport in the desert centuries before the invention of flight? A pilot named Jim Woodman took this idea and tested it. He theorized that if the Nazca people could make the lines, maybe they could also fly. He built a hot air balloon, the Condor Eye, using only materials and technologies that would have been available to the ancient Nazca. In 1975, he and his co-pilot successfully flew in it, proving that it was at least possible for the Nazca to have seen their own work from the air. Skeptics argue that the runway theory makes no sense. The ground is soft sand and gravel, not suitable for landing heavy craft. The lines are not wide or strong enough. And why would advanced spacecraft need runways at all? Furthermore, archaeologists have found the remains of small wooden stakes at the end of some of the lines, suggesting they were laid out with simple geometry and surveying techniques, not with advanced technology. The ritual explanation, they argue, is far more consistent with other cultural practices in the region. But the image of a giant spaceport in the desert is hard to forget. Why create lines that are perfectly straight for over 5 miles? What was the purpose of the giant trapezoids that look so much like modern airport taxiways? If they were for ritual processions, why are there so many lines that cross over each other in a chaotic jumble? Were the Nazca people really just talking to their gods? Or were they trying to flag down a ride home? Number 1 is the Great Pyramid, a power plant left by a starfaring race. There is no ancient mystery more famous than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing. Are built around 2560 BC. It is a mountain of stone. It consists of an estimated 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite, some weighing up to 80 tons. It was the tallest man-made structure in the world for over 3,800 years. Its 4 sides are almost perfectly aligned with the 4 cardinal directions. The precision is astonishing. For a structure of its size, built with supposedly primitive tools, it is an impossible achievement. The mainstream Egyptological view is that the Great Pyramid was a tomb, built for the pharaoh Khufu. It was constructed over a 20-year period by a massive, highly organized workforce of tens of thousands of skilled Egyptian laborers, not slaves. They quarried the stones, transported them up the Nile, and then used a system of ramps to haul them into place. The interior chambers, the King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery were designed to protect the pharaoh's body and treasure for the afterlife. It is the ultimate expression of royal power and religious belief, but this explanation is full of problems. First, no mummy has ever been found in the Great Pyramid. The granite sarcophagus in the King's Chamber was found empty and is completely devoid of markings. Second, the sheer logistics are mind-boggling. How did they lift 80-ton granite blocks quarried 500 miles away up to a height of over 200 feet? The ramp theories are all problematic. A single straight ramp would need to be over a mile long. Third, the precision. The base is level to within an inch. The alignment to true north is accurate to within a tiny fraction of a degree. How did they achieve this? This is where the ancient astronaut theory provides a radical alternative. The Great Pyramid was not a tomb. It was a machine. This idea has been most famously promoted by author and engineer Christopher Dunn in his book, The Giza Power Plant. He argues that the pyramid's design and materials are perfectly suited for a specific technical function. He proposes that the pyramid was designed to harness the natural vibrations of the Earth and convert them into microwave energy. In his theory, the underground chambers would capture the Earth's vibrations. These vibrations would be amplified as they moved up through the precise structure of the pyramid. The Grand Gallery, with its granite beams, would act as a series of resonators. The King's Chamber, built of solid granite burnt a stone rich in quartz crystal burner, would be the heart of the power plant. The quartz would convert the mechanical vibrations into electrical energy, the piezoelectric effect. This energy would then be beamed out as microwaves. What for? Perhaps to power a craft or to send a signal deep into space. As other theories point to the pyramid's astronomical connections. The Orion correlation theory, proposed by Robert Bauval, suggests the three pyramids of Giza are laid out to mirror the three stars of Orion's belt. The so-called air shafts in the King's Chamber are not for ventilation. They point directly to specific stars as they would have appeared in the sky thousands of years ago. Was the pyramid a map, a device for celestial navigation, or even a machine designed to help the pharaoh's soul travel to the stars, literally? Scientists have recently made a discovery that adds a strange twist. In 2018, a team of physicists published a study in the Journal of Applied Physics showing through simulations that the Great Pyramid can concentrate electromagnetic energy in its internal chambers and under its base. It acts like a giant resonator. This doesn't prove it was a power plant, but it shows that its shape has unusual energetic properties. So, what is it, a pharaoh's vanity project of unimaginable scale? Or a functional piece of technology built with a purpose we are only just beginning to guess at? Why build a tomb with such incredible mathematical and astronomical precision, encoding constants like p and the golden ratio in its dimensions? If the Egyptians built it with ramps and sledges, where's the evidence? Where are the tools, the plans, the records of this colossal project? Why does the most magnificent building of the ancient world have almost nothing written on its inside walls, when other tombs are covered in text? Is the Great Pyramid a monument to a king, or is it a silent waiting machine?